So today I wanted to share a little bit from the Zoom forum that Venerable Manlam and I did the other day with the University of Pampas in Brazil. I don't know a lot of the details about the forum, but a number of our Dharma friends in Brazil, Rua and Maria Clara Machado, who have been taking the online courses with the Abbey and are so very much connected to the Dharma in Brazil. And somehow they managed to organize this forum with 33 students at the university with some very thought-provoking questions that they had posed to me and Venerable Manlam. And so I will share just one of them and then maybe over the course of time share some of the others. It was extremely interesting conversation. Unfortunately, we didn't have a Q&A. It was the time just flew before we knew it, the time was over. But the questions were very thought-provoking, and I'm still thinking about them. So the little blurb that they had for the forum was, "We live in a competitive world which leads us to loneliness and sadness, in which acts of kindness are considered to be weaknesses. But what would happen if kindness were actually a source of strength?" So that's the first number of questions, was about competition and why kindness is considered a weakness in the competitive world, and could it possibly be ever a strength? Could kindness promote a happier life? This was about loneliness, that a lot of the students are experiencing loneliness, and how would kindness help them have a less lonely life? And the importance of kindness and how it can protect us from this chaotic world as a tool that really can change our lives in it. And they had these questions regarding the external chaos that's happening in the world. How is that caused, and does it have any relationship to what's going on in internal chaos in our own minds? So they were four distinct, and then where does kindness come from and how do you develop it? So those were the four series of questions. So today I just wanted to talk about the competition piece, because that was the one they gave me and Venerable Manlam the most time to talk about. And I'll just basically share my insights, and then Venerable Manlam would like to share her insights later on. And one of the senses that I got, it was a simultaneous translation from English to Portuguese and Portuguese to English, is that there was a professor in the Zoom that it sounded like she wanted to see what Buddhism had to offer in terms of nourishing the university culture. She mentioned diversity, she mentioned inclusion, and she mentioned kindness, to somehow nourish that and put it into the university culture. Now, whether they're having the same issues that our universities are having right now, which looks like inclusion, forget it. Diversity seems to be a gasoline rather than a nourishing mood. And I'm not sure about kindness. So she said, I'm just very curious to participate and see what might be offered. So the first piece was this whole idea about competition. And can kindness even arise in this competitive world? And that many times, not only does competition bring out the best in us, but it also brings out the worst in us. So I went back to, I've been thinking about this since the Zoom on Monday, and in the old days, when I was young, or even a teenager, competition seemed to be reserved for those people who were up at this certain level of the game, you know, the professional sports, the musicians, the Oscars, the Emmys, the politicians. And down where us normal folks were, you tried out for your class play, you tried out for the field hockey team, you ran for class president, you maybe went to get a new job. But it had this, I'm going to put my best foot forward, but there wasn't this kind of hard-hearted pressure and demonizing the rival and just sucking up to everybody to get what you want, and just to totally consume yourself with this one thing that you're trying to attain. It was a part of growing up. It was part of, and a lot of it was collaborative. It was usually teamwork or team playing or things like that. So for some, now competition seems to be you're competing against everybody about anything, whether who makes the best pizza, who's got the nicest car, who's got the most tattoos, who's got the best widgets, who's going to, Timbuktu instead of Nepal. I mean, there's so like better, more. And it happens, it's like with our siblings, it's with our colleagues, it's with our classmates, it's with our neighbors, it's with our social circles. There's nobody that's exempt from this competition, which we've already talked about this at the Abbey, this comparing mind that just drives this competition in our culture. I mean, we all want to do our best, but when it comes to the part that in terms of winners and losers, that you can do your best, but unless you're at the top of the pack and you get the fame, the reputation, the promotion, the money, the praise, you don't matter. There's no value as far as the world is concerned. And to be the best, you have to somehow see your challenger or your rival as somebody who's almost a threat to your ability to achieve what it is that you're striving for. And so the comparing mind is a miserable mind because it does this we do this strange thing, is that we forgo, first of all, this ability to assess our own skills, assess our own capacity, our own shortcomings, to be able to, as part of the human developmental stage of growing, you learn how to be able to track yourself. But somehow this gets put away, and instead you're competing against somebody who's coming from a totally different background, totally different predisposition, totally different conditioning, or you're set to some goal that somebody put this bar up there that you somehow have to jump over to be the best at. So the competition is like almost discord. I mean, you're competing against these odds that just don't line up with how to bring out the best in you. At least this is how my thinking was going. And then it brings jealousy, it brings arrogance, self-doubt, insecurity, despair. And I think at times when you're really going for the gusto, like some of the best of the best in our world, it looks like life gets out of balance. There's like nothing else but this all-consuming your time, your family, your resources, all around achieving something that is beyond what most people ever even think about. But your whole life seems to get out of balance, gets off the mark, gets unsettled, doesn't seem to be very healthy. And there's a beautiful example of this in our professional world. I'll talk about that if I have time. And so, and because there's no place for self-honest assessment, because your reference point is somebody else's skills, somebody else's abilities that you somehow have to be better than. And then there's a lot of mental health issues. I mean, the pressure to keep, once you get to excel in whatever thing it is, keeping that place requires a lot of strategy, a lot of work. And there's a lot of mental health issues that can arise. And so loving kindness then, okay, so where does loving kindness or kindness fit into that kind of paradigm? Because it's seen as a weakness, because you can't possibly win if you're encouraging your rivals, if you're rejoicing in their talents and skills. You can't win if you wish your opponent well. I mean, we have a very famous saying, I don't know if it's still out there anymore, but it's, nice guys finish last. I mean, that's been one of the proverbial cultural trendsetters as far as just being out in the world and being with your peers, your friends, strangers, whatever. And it only matters when you're the best, which I think makes for a much smaller world. You know, not everybody you don't rejoice in everybody's ability, only a few in this huge, vast display of people who try to do their best. And it really does fuel the self-importance, the self-centered thought, the self-preoccupation. So how would kindness really be a source of strength? Well, I'm not sure. I still have not come to a conclusion that works for me. I'm not sure whether they're antithetical, that kindness and competition, can they coexist? So the only way that I would see that is to be able to shift the paradigm of competition itself. I mean, it's not to say that supporting each other to be the best we can. We do that here at the Abbey. We do that with debate. We do that with asking a lot of questions, with reflecting and doing group discussion. And sometimes having someone who's sort of paralleling you, going with you, helps you if you've got a set of limitations that you've already established about how good you think you are. sometimes our peers and our friends can be the best inspirers to let go of some self-limiting ideas that we may have about ourselves and our abilities. So in some way, having that healthy, inspiring charge, even kind of poking at us, is not entirely a bad thing. It can be extremely supportive to getting us to do the best we can. And when you know that everybody is doing their best, and that's not a linear thing. I mean, best is all over the map. It's on all different levels. I think it's extremely good news for the world. There's something about everybody getting up in the morning, just doing the best they can. That just would make, and having that kind of mind, not that kind of mind, I want to be the best above everybody, but to do the best I can. How the world would be able to just hold that and expand and grow and be nourished by everybody's capacity doing the best they can. The thing that is like diametrically opposite from what I see sometimes with this extreme competition, this comparing mind, is that kindness is generally collaborative, it's cooperative, it's inclusive, it's teamwork, it's interdependent. To do something that you love, that gives you purpose and meaning in life, and to do it with others, and to do it as a source of inspiration and collaboration and cooperation. In my mind, from what I'm seeing right now, from a few decades ago, I can't make that work without changing the fundamental paradigm of competition. Because without the competition, or how would we be able to do this without having to prove our worth to the world? Because that's a lot what competition is, that you're doing it sometimes for your own self-assessment, but you're also doing it because there's an expectation in some field that you are participating in that is looking for the best of the best. So to be able to prove our worth to the world within a certain context that doesn't have a lot to do with how I'm feeling about myself. That the practice of learning how to respect ourselves and to find our self-worth is part of developing a whole human being. And sometimes I think it gets lost in the shuffle of the competition, that the self-evaluation, the self-respect gets lost or mixed up with what are other people thinking? What are other people? How are they judging me? What's the expectation? And it gets really convoluted. That our values come from within our own ability to assess and evaluate our own talents, our skills, and nourish them, and to find where we need to grow and where we need to expand. The other place that kindness would work is that if we see that we don't get to be the best that we can be without the kindness of others, that for our teachers, our mentors, our friends, our family, there's a whole structure of people behind us that are giving us all the support we need when we're really trying to be the best we can. So there actually needs to be a humility that comes along with competition, that I wouldn't be here. And I know sometimes I used to yawn through those when I was a kid, those Oscars. I'd like to thank my mother and my dog and my best friend and my rabbi but they'd stand up there and you could see that this person was winning this award because they had these 2,500 people behind them, edging them on and encouraging them and supporting them. And that always kind of, and I was like, oh yeah, here we go again. But it was like, this is how dependent arising happens. This is how cause and effect bring results. So I'm still kind of the conclusion, and as I said in the forum, I said, I'm not quite sure these two things can coexist without the purview of competition being altered to the extent that everybody wins, everybody is acknowledged, that teamwork matters, that collaboration is the collaboration is the most important. And so I'm not sure what the reasoning was for them to bring that up as the main question in this purview, but it must be something that's impacting the university community at large, because I think some of these questions may have come from a student configuration or from Rui and Maria Clara sensing something, or the professor. So once again, I think that this is kindness is so remarkably helpful, but to be seen as a weakness, to see as something that isn't necessary. I mean, it's a fundamental quality of our hearts and minds. It's like that's where innately we've got this kindness as part of our bailiwick for being humans. And so I'm still thinking about it. But anyway, I wanted to share some of the thoughts that I gave to them, and there was just a lot of, there wasn't a lot of response because they were trying to fill in a lot of time with all of these questions. But Rui was like, the whole Buddhist worldview seems to be expanding some of the possibilities at the university. And that's the part that seemed to be the benefit from this forum. So the other questions I may present later on in some of the other BBCs because they were also very thought-provoking and continue to be so for my own practice.